originally about 10 years ago. There was about 5 of us got together and decided to set up a very small informal club.
I thought it was a good idea. Yeah, for sure.
Wasn't impressed when we told him that we were putting his photo up.
No, I wasn't.
I think that was the first image of the day, was it? I think that was the first image of the day. Yeah.
I saw that there was an artist in the community scheme going, and I thought it was an interesting concept. You know, artists normally working on their own, stashed away somewhere, and this idea of bringing the artists out into the community and working with the community appealed to me. And when I looked further into it, and I saw this phrase that caught my eye, I said that really what they wanted was that it was a collaboration between an artist and a group, and that it should have a lasting, memorable and enriching experience. And I thought, well, who wouldn't want to be part of that? So I thought I'd apply for it, and as it turned out, I ended up being linked up with the Mohill Photography Club.
Going back a few years ago, we did like courses, and we had a girl from Newtown Gore, Jennifer, but she came in and she helped us out and showed us the right way to take pictures maybe, and how to put them on computers and all, and that's going back now. 10 years ago was a long time ago.
I'm a freelance photojournalist. I work mainly with the national newspapers. So normally I'm out doing features and news events for the national newspapers. So I meet a lot of the people in different circumstances. I come in, I do the photographs and I leave, and I generally don't have time to sit down and discuss things and chat things with people. So this was a completely new experience for me. It was a great opportunity and I grabbed it. When we had our first meeting, it was like having a blank roll of film, and we had decided how we would use this blank roll of film. So the first thing we decided really was that, and what became clear at the first meeting, was that the people wanted to involve the entire community, not just the photography club, but if possible to get everybody involved in whatever project we chose. Eventually we decided, with the resources that we had and with our abilities, the best thing that we could do and the most enriching thing we could do would be to capture sort of a day in the life of Mohill. And we decided we'd set up a pop-up studio. We do for 12 hours from 8 in the morning till 8 in the evening, and we'd invite everybody who was in town that day to stop and allow us photograph them. I wouldn't photograph them. It would be the people in the photography club who would photograph them. And this is what made the essential difference, because what happened was people came down especially for it, friends, relatives, all the businesses here got behind it. People came into Mohill especially on that day to be recorded on that day, the last day of March of this year.
We were very unsure, like the response that we got was just, it was phenomenal. Absolutely, it was fantastic.
It was amazing.
Fantastic.
Because it was Therese and the people from the photography club. All the businesses here know those people. Their friends live here, their families live here. I knew they'd come out and support them, and they did. They came out in their droves, and it was a fantastic day. Absolutely. And it certainly was memorable, enriching, and everything else that the artisan community was supposed to be.
We read an article maybe 10 or 15 years ago where Philips Electronics in the Netherlands, they had a rule of thumb that for every 10 engineers they would put an artist in among them. Engineers tend to actually, they want the problem put in front of them and then they'll actually solve it. The artistic side tends to actually maybe be a bit more abstract and a bit more the dreamy side, and then the engineers take that dream and actually turn it into reality.
I thought it was actually, for an artist residency, it was reasonably long. I was here for 6 months and it turned into the best part of the year because we did a large, rather ambitious exhibition at the end of it together, yes, which was fantastic and worked out great. I had so many different ideas in investigations, and I actually had time to go down some sort of dead-end roads to make decisions, and for artists that's a very precious thing to do, I think, as much as it is for scientists really, because research often doesn't all succeed, as John knows, and I've witnessed some of the working processes here, which is very, very pioneering research behind these doors here, and some of the things work out and some of them don't, and that's the same for us artists. So I think the time allowed in what John mentioned here as well, that we're all kind of stumbling around in the dark for a few months, was very important to make such, I hope, good results or something worthwhile, hopefully, for people to be inspired to think about.
The mirrors was from our previous life, but we'd done a lot of molds for the automotive sector for rear view mirrors. When Tinka came in at the start, I suppose based on the team that we were trying to help companies bring medical devices to market, she was trying to say, well, how could she develop that? And she just picked up one of the rear view mirrors, and her interpretation of it was that when you look back, you can look back right to your childhood. You see yourself as a young child with your parents, and everybody is actually healthy. And as you go forward to your present day, your parents are getting old, you're getting older as well, and that people are collecting diseases and whatever. So she played with that theme. You know, I thought it was a very interesting concept, and something that we totally would not have come up with ourselves. I suppose we were going into the world of abstract. There wasn't necessarily going to be a tangible result at the end of this because we couldn't describe it. Yes, there was a lot of anxiety, not in a bad way, but I suppose none of us really knew what the end result of this would be. Yes, there were some people that right up to a day before the exhibition, the final result, they were still scratching their heads as to what this might look like.
Yeah, but I think this is the challenge and the interesting thing about working in context outside of, for me, outside of the art world, more or less, outside of the peer group, because there is a much more, of course, we all study the same things, we all know more or less certain cornerstones of what we're talking about, whereas here I thought I had some very different and very interesting conversations, yes, and not everybody who's studied engineering or whatever will take to art. I mean, that is a given, but I think it's really interesting to be placed in a situation where you have to also, it helps you clarify your own thoughts and look at your own practice quite differently, because it's a much bigger world, and I think it's an interesting challenge, but I think it's also an important one.
I started to notice that musicians would speak of playing with other musicians but playing for dancers, and dancers would also say, I dance to the music rather than with the music. So that really sparked off ideas. I could see a huge divide there, when it should be one. I could see that there was a big wall in between, that dancers were dancers and musicians were musicians, and each person had one side of the wall to stand. So I thought, I'm going to try and knock that wall down and bring it back to what it should be about, and that the music and dance is all one. Well, I thought of musicians that I really like to work with and dance to, and I picked them because of the friendship that I have with them, that already we were comfortable with each other, working with each other, and also because their music really makes me dance and not only me, but it makes them dance. The musicians and singer that I picked were Nell Ní Chróinín, which is a singer from Cork. I picked David Munnelly on box from Mayo, Stephen Doherty on melodeon from Mayo, and Danny Diamond from Dublin on fiddle. I've been dancing with Stephen Doherty since I was about 12 years of age, so we know our movements and music and dance inside out, so much so that he can mimic me dancing. So I think that's a really good place to start. And we love working on new pieces together, you know, breaking boundaries and seeing, you know, maybe picking a polka rather than a reel, and no solo dancer would ever dream of dancing to a polka. I suppose experimenting and openness to do things like that really invited me to work with him. For Nell, it's a singer, so you would never see dancers dance with singers. So that's straight away that drew me to that, and she sings very rhythmic Irish tunes like on Kosher, which is strong beats, and a lot of the songs she sings have been changed into, or not changed, maybe they came from traditional tunes like slides and polkas. David Munnelly I've done a lot of touring with, and his music, if anybody is familiar with him, is driving music, and he can't sit still. He's permanently playing the accordion and dancing around the stage. I chose Danny Diamond from travelling with him on tours. I noticed that the more he got, more relaxed he got, and the more he started to play the tunes that he was really comfortable with, that as I was dancing beside him, Danny started dancing as well. And he didn't know he was doing that, and by the end of the tour I had mentioned it to him that I really like his footwork, and he didn't realise at all that he was dancing, so that was something that drew me to him straight away, and his music. I've been a big fan of his music for a long time. And I think not just myself as a learning experience, but the musicians have learned so much about this as well, and the possibilities and connection that can happen when we're given time to actually work together. So how we went about that was we looked at the notions of what dancers should be doing, or sometimes musicians. And you'll often go to a dance competition and see that the musicians are behind the curtain and they can't even see the dancers. Or quite often that the dancer is put out in front of the musicians with their back to them. And that's like me speaking to you right now with my back to you. Because really it's meant to be a conversation together and be able to show people that connection. And it's very hard to connect when you're standing in front of someone. So we looked at all those kind of notions and we challenged them. If we forget about the audience and just focus on the two of us and what we're about to do, that it's actually far more powerful than standing and facing the audience and making the performance all about performing for them. I think this bursary award has been a huge catalyst in the movement and growth of what dance and music can grow into and the relationship between both.
We're in the old railway station, our gauge railway station in Mohill in County Leitrim, which has seen the last train going through it in 1959.
It hasn't actually had any public use. It's a bird.
It's a swallow. She lives here.
It was bought collectively through a mixture of small donations and large donations from the local community who thought they might do something nice with the space. And the original idea was to reopen the narrow gauge line with a working steam train, but it was totally unfeasible, so it didn't happen.
Since then, it's been basically waiting for a project that basically would benefit the community. Some young people feel about it as they've been using it as a place to come and drink. Yeah. So they probably feel quite positive about the space because it's, you know, it's a nice place to probably hang out.
And no parental supervision.
I suppose we will find out what people feel and think of the space, but it'll be really interesting to find out. I think once we position ourselves here and put a bit of energy into it, yeah, people will come in and tell us what they think or what they feel about it.
We're going to be here for 4 months and we're going to have a selection of art exhibitions, events and happenings.
I like to say that I work with moving images, so primarily that's video, but it's also performance. And lately I've started working with text a lot as well. For me, I'm really interested in the idea of travel and time and change, and I'm very interested in after-death existences and the idea of spectral images, which can be all kinds of different things that kind of come back to haunt or reappear. So those kind of themes are for sure in departures for me, and also the idea of the station itself.
I suppose being an artist for me is a way of being alive, like more alive than I would be if I wasn't an artist. So in a very childlike way, the way a child kind of builds tents and put things around to kind of make a little universe. I think, that's what my art practice does. It kind of is a way of responding to experience and digesting it, making it mine. We're putting up exhibitions, and two main exhibitions, one upcoming in September in Culture Night called Departures, which will present our own work. We will be responding to the fact that this is a train station, responding to the fact that this is a disused train station, responding to the fact that we're in a place that's been abandoned but that has had a purpose, responding to the fact that this is a place where people left from or arrived in, responding to the fact that a departure is something that everybody would have an idea about. So I'm trying to maybe have three talks of 3 events where it's an occasion for people to come in and discuss that and think, okay, what is it that we lost? What is it that if we remember it, we can still recreate it? Mm-hmm. So it's this thing of really, rather than bringing tissues and cry about what we've lost, it's basically thinking, okay, what is it that we remember that was good, and how can we bring it back?
So the waiting room is going to be a public salon that I'm going to have, and I'm going to, again, it's a 3-week series, and I'm going to invite people who I think are super interesting and have really interesting ideas about how to live your life, actually, and ideas about the meaning of life. So they're going to be quite philosophical. And it's very much responding to the idea of the station as a metaphor. It's a place where you come, you go, travel, change, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It won't be sort of like a talk, it'll be a little bit more rounded, and it's coming from an old idea in philosophy that actually the best way to figure things out is to talk it through. So if you have an idea worth sharing, you can learn more about your idea by sharing it with someone, and they'll kind of question you, and then you'll both come to more of an understanding than you would actually if you just wrote it down and distributed it.
My name is Maura Williamson. I'm from Carrick. I'm 13 years drama facilitator, coordinator of Leitrim Youth Theatre Company in Carrick. Currently we've 70 students from the juniors to seniors there. Youth theatre gives young people a great place to, first of all, to express themselves, to socialise, to step beyond what they think about themselves and who they are, and particularly to tap into their creativity, their imagination, and also to allow them to experience professional theatre skill within the setting of the workshops and when we further move on to productions.
We were somewhere else. We were downtown, right? Anyone asks us, that's what we tell them. We have nothing to do with this. Anyone asks, that's what we tell them, right?
That's your idea, is it?
Yeah, why you got a better one?
Our new project under Leitrim Youth Theatre is Bright Sparks under Creative Ireland Call. Very excited about that because this, I suppose, has come out of years of working with the youth theatre and seeing a niche where there are some beautiful, young, unique, what I call special abilities people with huge talent. It's almost like society and organisations dictate what is good for them. And slowing down that pace gives me the opportunity to hear what they have to say, to hear their voice, to hear from them what it's like within their education system, to hear what they might like to say through the medium of drama, theatre, what they want to say to us. And this project will involve young people from 14 to 18 years of age. And I suppose we're looking at young people who find difficulty in their school settings, young people who may be classed by society or by individuals as having abilities, disabilities, special needs. And I think my view as a drama facilitator looking at those young people is I want to come in and I want to hear their voice.